Hello, this is D and I'm back with another video. Well, yesterday we had our Xbox Series X gameplay reveal event, and I have to say most gamers were left disappointed. Now, we did get a look at a bunch of new games that will be running on the Xbox Series X. However, the initial stream was actually at 30 frames per second, so you had some games that were running at 60 frames per second, but due to the stream, you were getting it at 30 frames per second. I don't know why Microsoft didn't choose to broadcast this event at 60 frames per second when you're showcasing 60 frames per second games. Now, if you go and look at the uploaded footage, you'll see that it isn't 60 frames per second, and at these games, the quality, it just looks a lot better. There's a lot less compression. Now, I do recommend that you guys rewatch that event to really get a grasp of what Microsoft was trying to show at the event. Nonetheless, they promised a lot of gameplay footage, and we really didn't get that. We got a lot of trailers. Now, we did get some gameplay footage for a few games, but nothing really important, especially like Valhalla. Now, everybody tuned in to see Assassin's Creed Valhalla as Ubisoft promised a gameplay debut, and we didn't get that. We got a trailer. It was a well put together trailer, and it did look like it was in-engine, but it wasn't gameplay, and that's what this whole event was centered around, was the first gameplay reveals for the Xbox Series X, and unfortunately Microsoft did not deliver that. However, we did get some good news out of yesterday's event. Now, the game that they showcased, the Medium, where it's a supernatural game, so it's kind of a scary game, and I hear that they're getting one of the guys that did Silent Hill, the soundtrack, I believe it's for the second Silent Hill, is also involved in this game. Now, I found it really interesting, and there was another game, Scorn. Now, this game was pretty gross, to be honest with you guys. Looks like it's really out there. I think maybe metalheads will probably like this game, I'm not sure, but nonetheless, these two games are exclusive to the Xbox Series X, so you won't find them on the PlayStation 5. You'll find them on PC and the Xbox Series X, so they're actually exclusives, and I find it kind of strange that Microsoft didn't mention that at the event. Nonetheless, the Medium and the Scorn are console exclusives to the Xbox Series X. Now, there was another game that I saw at yesterday's event, The Ascent. Now, that game really had me interested. I believe that game is also a next generation only game. I'm not quite sure. I think it's coming on the PC and on the next generation consoles. I'm not quite sure. I'm gonna have to check that out. Anyways, that game I found really interesting, but the event overall, yes, it was quite disappointing. Now, we did also get some good news from Aaron Greenberg, which stated that the Xbox Series X will have a standard output of 60 frames per second, and that some games even allow up to 120 frames per second support. Now, yesterday at the event, we saw that Dirt 5 was promised to have 120 frames per second support, as well as 4K 60 frames per second. Now, with the GPU and CPU power that's inside these next generation consoles, I do think it's going to be a normal thing that we're going to see some games at 4K 60 and some games at, say, 1440p 120 frames per second, or maybe they'll do 4K with some variable frame rate on it. Nonetheless, I think that frame rates are going to be a thing that's here to stay next generation. I think we can forget about the days of 30 frames per second games. Well, I think that most games will be 60 frames per second. Now, I did ask a few developers this on the RDX podcast a few weeks back, and they said there's no reason why the next generation consoles shouldn't be able to deliver 4K 60 frames per second on any game unless the developer chooses otherwise, or just poor optimization. So I expect most of these games to be 4K 60 because the console, let's be honest, it's powerful enough to run these games at 60 frames per second, and frankly, I'm tired of console gamers being stuck playing 30 frames per second. 60 frames per second makes such a big difference. 120 frames per second is silky smooth. Now, when you start getting up higher than that, to be honest with you, I can't really notice a difference at the higher frame rates, but 120 frames per second is really smooth, as is 60 frames per second, and I think next generation console owners are in for a treat when they get these consoles and play these games at the high resolution and, of course, the frame rates that come with it. Anyways, I want to know what you guys think about yesterday's event. Yes, I think it was an L for the Microsoft brand. I think they're going to have to do better. I think they're going to have to convey their message better and deliver on it. They promised us gameplay, and we really didn't get that. We got mostly trailers or little snippets of gameplay with nothing explained to the games, and I think it was a big mistake on Microsoft's part. I hope they learned from this and that July's event, they have a better showing. Now, let's be honest, these were third-party games, and they weren't even the AAA third-party games. Now, the July event is their first-party games, and these are the games that truly have to showcase the Xbox Series X, and Microsoft has to hit it out the park. Sony has so much mindshare that this needs to show a few games, and everybody's gonna lose their minds and want to go out there and purchase the PlayStation 5. So Microsoft has to do much better at their next showing, and we don't have too long to wait. July is just around the corner. Hopefully we're all out of quarantine at that point of time, enjoying some of the summer, and of course the gaming events that will follow. Anyways, I want to know what you guys think, so let me know in the comment section down below. And like I usually say, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys on the next one.